All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George Show. If you're listening to this, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But if you're watching this, yes, I look like a blue-collar home builder right now. I'm rocking a new vest that I fell in love with. And today's guest shares the sentiment because she loves vests, but she also loves the outdoors as much as I do. And she is the queen of getting you to calm the fudge down when it comes to thriving in your business. And I got to give her a little bit of credit. And I'm also going to lead into this conversation a bit because you've heard me talk about this before. And I did an episode with Chris Tavecchio on this, on how entrepreneurship is a professional sport. We're basically business athletes. And it's a game right now that in 2025 is demanding a whole lot of different skill sets from us while navigating a whole lot of audibles, red flags, and penalties that none of us saw coming. And I couldn't think of a more fitting guest. Like, she is a complete BA as a woman. I am friends with this incredible guest today. We became like Instagram fast friends, and then I called us friends and I didn't ask for her consent, but she's smiling right now. So I think I'm in the safe zone. But to kind of give you some background, she has a master's in sports and performance psychology. She literally spent 2 years coaching high performing collegiate athletes before she went and spent 3 years bossing me around when I was a Marine as a civilian contractor in the US Army, helping them become the best possible version of themselves. And now she helps female founders calm the fudge down to truly believe that business is easy. She loves nature, extreme sports, and she is the queen of like regulating your nervous system. And for lack of a better metaphor, teaching you how to surf. And for those of you who can't surf like me, I promise you, you're going to want to surf after this episode, maybe just not in the water. And so without further ado, I don't know how else to say it, but welcome to the show, Karina.
Hi, I am so stoked to be here. It's not even funny. And what an amazing intro that you just gave off of my stats. I feel so welcome here. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I tell everybody this on the podcast. My guests are probably sick of hearing it, but I think my retirement career is going to be an MC for everybody I love.
Honestly, you're
It is
so
my
good at it.
favorite thing. I'm like, let's do. I just got to MC my first ever event in Vancouver by
I love
accident.
it.
They're like, we want you to MC and keynote. I'm like, give it to me.
You're
I
like, I
hate to
got
admit
this.
this. I loved having the mic for like 20 individual 5-minute keynotes before I gave the closing keynote. I was like, I
Amazing.
could do this all day.
Amazing. I love
So
it.
before we dive into your background, your story, your incredible skill set, I asked you before the show and I was like, what do you think is like the biggest thing that people struggle with in business, especially female founders, or this is also applicable to men? And you're basically like, none of them know how to surf. And I was like, well, I tried in Hawaii and I almost drowned. But the way that you describe surfing and talking about surfing is really powerful when it comes to business. And I would love for you to kind of share it and unpack it for us.
Yeah. So, one, how surfing, how like athletics, nature, all of that, I truly believe comes into running a business and just being the best version of you is that that's just one way, one avenue that you're learning how to master who you are. Adventure, mountaineering, surfing, running a business is one avenue that you are learning these skills to be the best version of you. And that's how the true adventure is and finds you. And where I came up with my business name is this is just one avenue, whether you're running a business, you're learning to surf, you're mountaineering, all of that. So, as far as the analogy, I'm the queen of analogies. I love analogies. They're the best thing in the world because I think it really helps get people to understand what they're going through or like what skill they need to use in a way that they're not all caught up in adrenaline of like stress and cortisol levels are too high. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, let me go surf some waves. We're not dealing with business right now. We're looking at waves to surf. It's like, that's more calming. It's more chill. So, the analogy that I use with my clients all the time is surfing waves and how that can lay out how you control your thoughts, therefore create your results and able to process the emotions that you're feeling, which I know you love processing emotions. And every time I talk to you, you're like, have you processed them? And I'm like, sometimes. Um, but the analogy with surfing is when it comes to how much control we have over our thoughts. I got my degree and I 100% believe that we have full control over every single thought that came into our brain. And That's not true. And I spent years and years and years teaching people, no, you have control. No, you have control. And there were so many skills that I was like, no, you have control. And even the like research tells us that we have control. And I don't think that that is necessarily true. And where I kind of came up with this analogy is I was literally in Baja, Mexico, leading a retreat for female founders, and we were surfing. And I was like, oh my gosh, this connects so well. So the research shows that like thoughts come in, and this is like really boiled down to like the tens of hundreds of pages of research. I'm going to explain in like 10 seconds. The research says a thought comes into your brain, an emotion is felt, an action is taken, which creates the results in your life, right? Thought triggers emotion, creates action, decides your outcome, your results, right? So I can save you all the research of Albert Ellis and all of the ABCs and all of the theories that I can list out. I just saved you hours and hours and hours and so many research papers that I wrote myself. Thought, emotion, action, result. How I see surfing, the analogy of surfing is we as humans have no control over the waves that come in from the ocean. The tide that comes in, how big the waves are, how the moon is pulling it. Like, I don't even fully understand science or something with the moon. And I don't know. Waves come in. We can't control the waves hitting, right? Even as someone who grew up in Florida, we can create barricades, but we cannot stop the waves from coming in. Those are your thoughts. Every thought that comes into your brain is an ocean wave that comes onto shore. But what you do have control over is being the surfer and surfing specific waves. As surfers hone the skill of surfing, at the beginning, they surf every single wave that comes in. They're like, let me try this one. Let me catch this one. Let me paddle as fast as I can and try and catch it, ride it into shore. And as they get better, as they get more skilled, more honed, aka you get better at understanding your thoughts and understanding your emotions and which thoughts are going to serve you, they start paying attention to the makeup of the waves. They start paying attention to how the waves are forming, where they came from, how long have they been rolling. I don't know how to surf, to be completely honest. I don't know all the criteria that actually surfing that they're looking for in waves, but we understand the analogy of they start honing the details of the wave, and they're able to pick and choose the waves that are going to serve them best and get them what they want. They're able to predict if it's going to be a barrel. They're able to predict if it's going to ride them all the way to shore. They're going to able to predict if it's going to break sooner than later, right? They are able to decide which ones are going to serve them for whatever they're trying to do in that moment. And so how that comes with our thoughts is these thoughts come in. Every thought that comes into your brain is an ocean wave that just keeps coming in and passing and hitting the shore. You as a surfer get to decide, is this wave going to serve me? I'm going to get on it. I'm going to surf it. I'm going to ride it into shore. I'm going to try my 360, whatever the heck you want to do. Like, you're going to ride it in and you're going to give that wave weight. AKA, like, you're going to give it space in your body, because if you sat there and let the wave pass, it's going to take 3 seconds, 5 seconds for the wave to pass. But if you ride the wave, it's going to be 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds of riding that thought, riding that wave in, giving it more space in your brain, in your body, in your world to create different results. So when I tell people that your life is decided by the waves that you are surfing, one, sometimes is a big slap in the face. You've been riding the wrong freaking waves. You've been riding the wrong waves and you keep getting on the wrong waves. And you're like, why do I keep falling? And your surf coach is like, well, you keep getting on them before they're breaking, or you keep getting on them after they're breaking, or you're, always getting on, I don't know, whatever the terminology of surfing is, but you're getting on the wrong waves. But the more you hone, hey, this wave, this thought served me so well. It helped me in my business. It helped me be a better mom. It helped me be a friend and stay calm and patient when I'm getting frustrated with my, other friend. Whatever it is, you want to give weight to the waves that are actually going to serve you. and let the other ones ride. You don't have control over all the ones that come in, but you do have control over the ones that you ride.
I love that. We could do an entire like 6-hour podcast just on this, because I'm like thinking about book recommendations. I'm like, even for your years of your master's degree for this, if anybody just wants to give themselves a crash course in self-coaching, you can go Google the CTFAR method, which is the same exact thing that Karina broke down. Your circumstances dictate your thoughts, which dictate your feelings, which dictates your actions, which dictates your results.
Yeah, that comes from the same
Place.
research. Yeah, Albert Ellis was the OG who created this.
Yeah, I actually just used it this weekend at the event. And I was like, all right, listen, you guys are getting stuck, because, you know, the point for everybody listening is, you know, maybe you don't resonate with surfing, but I also love what you said at the very beginning of like, even where the name of your business comes from, like True Adventure Co., like whatever that adventure is, it's our identity that we're becoming. And I say this on the podcast all the time, is that, you know, you can't scale your business till you scale yourself, but our identity is dictated by the choices that we make in that business. And I love the carry through on that. What I would love, just because I think for everybody listening, we have a lot of like female entrepreneurs that listen, and men, I love you too. Obviously I am one. I just own the fact that my favorite color is pink. I'd love for you to give an example of like a wave, because I think there's a lot of this that I see, and I know you probably see this as well, where like resistance will show up in the business, or this bad wave, and yet we'll just pretend it wasn't there, or we'll keep riding the same one. And so I'd love for you to give like a tangible example, whether you think of like a client or even yourself, just so people can kind of paint the picture of like what it's like to even navigate them.
Yeah. One client I was working with, she's an interior designer, and she and I were going through this model, and I teach it, you know, in step. I call it the performance coaching model: thought, emotion, action, result, right? And we went through, and I was like, what, you know, wave are we surfing right now? And she is in the process of thinking about getting ready to be a mom, essentially. She's building a business to where she wants to have a balanced business and have a balanced business and be a mom and still be able to work how she wants to work and her business support her and whatnot. And the way that the bad, you know, wave that she's been riding a lot is, I can't have a balanced business. And every time that she looks at her business, she sees evidence that supports that. And the thing that I think a lot of people misunderstand about running a business is that you can actually run a business with a really shitty thought. You can actually like be really successful by avoiding and like running out of fear, right? Mm-hmm. Like you can get pretty dang far. I look at like collegiate athletes, Olympic athletes, and the amount of athletes that I look at, and I'm like, oh my God, their athlete identity, meaning like their identifier of being an athlete, is so incredibly unhealthy, but they are one of the most winningest, whatever sport it is. Like there's a particular skier. I feel bad like naming her. So like, I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to name her, because honestly, if I met her, I'd be like, you are amazing. I'm obsessed with you. But I listen to her interviews. I listen to her documentary, and now I'm going off on a tangent in the sport world. So sorry, I'll come back to the interior design.
Oh, let's go. But I live in tangents. I'm in this.
There's a documentary about this skier. She's an incredible skier. She is one of the most winningest skiers of all time. And if you're in the skiing world, you will know who this is. She's one of the most winningest skiers, racers of all times. And she has one of the most unhealthy athlete identity. And this woman is amazing. She gives back to her community. She works with incredible brands. Like she is a badass through and through. She is dedicated and disciplined and incredible. But that woman does not know how to quit when it's time to quit. And what that tells us is she doesn't know who she is without skiing. And she actually just came back out of retirement to try again. And she won again. And she did incredible again, which is amazing. But it just means that like she doesn't know who she is without this sport, which means that come a day that this sport is not there, she's going to be really lost. And when it comes to building a business, and again, like your business, your sport, your whatever, this is just one avenue that you're learning how to be a better human. your business can't be your whole life. And I was just on another podcast, Kate's podcast, and I literally talked about how your business cannot be your whole life. Otherwise, what happens, God forbid, one day you don't have that anymore.
Yep.
And you have to be who you are and okay with who you are in different avenues. You know, the athletes that get paralyzed, the business owners where, you know, crap hits the fan and you go bankrupt and you have to start from scratch. Like, who are you? And so bringing it all the way back to the interior designer, I was like, let's figure out how to do this. Let's not ride this wave of we've been giving so much weight to I can't build a balanced business. Because you know what? If we only looked for evidence that your business can't be balanced, we'd be right. We'd be correct. There's evidence that that is true. You're right. Right now. Right now, that is true. But one, you don't have a baby to balance. So it's not a factor that you're needing to figure out right now. And so that's one thought that came through that she was like continuing to ride again and again and again was I can't have a balanced business, which then just like circles the drain of like, if I can't have a balanced business, well, then I might as well just work until 7 p.m. And then if she works till 7 p.m., then of course she's not going to ever think that she can close her laptop at 5 p.m. every day because she works till 7 p.m. every single day, right? So it's just like a self-fulfilling prophecy that you're creating, that every cell in your being is reinforcing that singular thought. You are riding that wave again and again and again instead of getting off the way, like fall, let yourself. And you, most surfers, if you've watched them, even those that are like purposefully falling because they're like, and I'm done. It's not a graceful thing. You don't just like, let me just like hop off my surfboard. No, they fall into the water. Their board flips around in the wave. They probably get spun around, even if their head stays above water and they just like hopped off. Like, it is not a graceful thing. And that's okay. That's a part of it. That's like a, you know, you signed up for that. And so changing that, shifting that thought of what I do with my clients is work from the bottom up instead of working from top down of like, first we start with our thought, our emotion, our action, our result. Instead, we go result. What do we want to create? Let's work backwards. What actions do we need to do? That's literally our checklist. The amount of entrepreneurs that are like, I wish I had a handbook. Action step is your handbook. That's it. And then you work your way backwards. What do we need to feel in order to make those action steps happen? If we need to feel a certain way, what do we need to think in order to feel that way? And like, that's what I work with my clients, like reverse engineer it.
Yes, a million times. Yes, a million times. Even like, just because I love making book recommendations, there's two that have popped into my brain since we started. I think, and this is the psychologist part of your brain that will probably appreciate this, but Scott Carney wrote a book called A Wedge. And the wedge is the space between trigger and response, which is a muscle that can actually be trained and conditioned to prevent you from getting off that or on that wave, which I think is something that all of us benefit from. I loved that one. And then to your point, for everybody listening, you just made probably one of the most dramatic points in about 30 seconds of we don't start at the top, we start at the bottom. And, you know, I was having this conversation at the event last weekend because we had 25 entrepreneurs here. And I was like, no. I don't want to know what actions you're taking for today. I want to know who you want to become in 6 months, in 12 months, and then reverse engineering it. And we're going to get really geeky for a minute because you have a master's in this and I have a school of hard knock life relationship with this. But when you said, you know, when you get down to like, what are the results that you want, right? Whether that's harmony in your business, whether that's tight boundaries and containers, then you work back to like, well, what feeling do I want to feel? And what thought do I want to have? As silly as this analogy is, but you and I both speak them, and I can't think of another one. Our reticular activating system can either be our best friend or our biggest enemy when it comes to our brain. And I've tried to explain this to people millions and millions of ways, and myself included. And it took me like feeling it and experiencing it. And, you know, as much as I've used the car analogy, it lands every single time. And it's like, we were talking about this weekend. So to your point of getting the results that you want is by like asking yourself what they want to be. And then what emotions do you want to feel? Then starts with what thoughts am I going to use or create? And there is science on this, but also for everybody listening to this, like if you ever decide to get a new car and then you buy a red Jeep, I just want to promise you that the other 6,000 people in your town didn't go all buy red Jeeps that same day. It's that you didn't have it in your awareness, but now that you do, you start to notice it everywhere. And to Karina's point about our thoughts is, I agree with you what you said at the beginning of the show, is that I don't think I can control them all, but I can choose how to react or respond to them and insert new ones. And for everybody listening, you can use ChatGPT all you want. You can go find 1,000 studies on this about the things that we think and we tell ourselves. But what you're actually really doing is building in deeper neural grooves with positive thoughts tied to emotion, attached to a result. That when you start to see those things with something like gratitude, that gratitude starts to have you notice the same situation differently, which also starts to educate you about this said metaphorical wave that Karina and I are talking about. You'll start to notice the better waves versus the smaller waves. And then your confidence goes up and you'll start to realize, like, I can ride the bigger wave and skip the smaller wave. And so can you, from like the nobody listens to George because he's just an uneducated trigger puller most of his life, but now have a sports performance psychologist on, like, talk about like the RAS or the reticular activating system and like practices that people can utilize to like support their thoughts?
Yeah. Okay. So this was a study that was done that I thought was like the coolest study in the world. And it makes training for anything enjoyable and makes you want to do it. There is a study done that when it comes to creating new neural pathways, so for anyone who's like, this is a lot of science words that I don't understand, essentially, like, think of a path in snow. And if you've never seen snow, I promise you will be able to like still understand this. Snow falls, it's a foot deep. Okay. The first time you walk this path, let's say that you're wearing like ankle boots, not knee highs, ankle boots. First time you walk this path, you're getting a crap ton of snow in your boots and it doesn't feel good. It's cold, your feet are now wet, and you walk to your car and you're like, now I drive to work and my feet are wet and it sucks. It's not a fun time. It's not a fun experience. Day 2 comes, you step in the same footsteps that you just did, right? It becomes a lot easier. And then, so let's say the temperature stays the same. So the snow does not melt. You still have a foot of snow, but now you have solid footsteps. You continue to go. The snow starts to pack down a little bit deeper and deeper. And on day 10, that pathway is essentially paved, right? That it's like super easy. So that's what happens, like creating new neural pathways in the human brain, is that you are creating a snow path, right? So this study was done about like, how do we actually do that? How long does it actually take to create these new neural pathways, these new habits? This is where like habit tracking or habit building, or you read Atomic Habits, that's like a #1 business owner read. Yep. How do we actually build these habits? How do we actually train our brain to do this certain thing? They did a study that it takes about 400 rounds of doing whatever it is in order to create a neural pathway. 400. That's insane. That's a lot. That's more than 21 days. That's a lot. Who, raise your hand who wants to do it 400 times? Not me. I don't. Absolutely not. But what they found was if the participants were having fun while doing it, it took 15. What? That's insane. That's actually insane. To train a new skill, a new habit, a new thought would take you 400 times. I can't do that math of like 15 to 400, how many times more that is. A lot. And versus if you're having fun and enjoying something and then having that thought only takes 15 times. That's where the 21 day comes from, right? Where you can actually do that. But having fun and enjoying the experience of building a business or learning a new sport, you know, like I'm a huge extreme athlete person, and I can tell you the amount of times that I reevaluate my life on these like rock walls. I'm like rock climbing and I'm like, why do I do this? Is this fun? Am I having fun? And then I get to the top and I'm like, yeah, I'm having fun. I'm having a good time. Like, and I can learn skills so much faster because I genuinely am having a good time, even through the hardships of this is scary. And same thing with your business, right? Of
Mhm.
going through your business and trying to figure out how it can be fun. Building a business should be fun. You don't have to do it. If you're not having fun, why are you doing it? Now, don't get me wrong. We've all played Monopoly and we get frustrated and we wish we were winning. It doesn't mean that you have to be having fun 100% of the time, but it does mean that you have to be having fun most of the time, right?
Mhm.
And you will be able to create new neural pathways. You will be able to quite literally rewire your freaking brain if you are enjoying the experience.
1,000%. And I think too, there's something underneath what you said that I think applies to every entrepreneur. Nowhere in that neural pathway conversation or rewriting your thoughts, feelings, and results is there inaction. This is
Yeah.
not a stagnation activity. This is not a what I call mental masturbation activity, because I don't cuss, but everybody paints a picture of that. Like, this isn't a rumination activity. It's an active pursuit, right? And it's not an active pursuit of perfection or getting to a finish line. It's an active pursuit of the progress. And I was about to ask you what you just answered, which was having it be fun, but like, that doesn't mean all the time. It means at the core of it, or the payoff on the other side, or this result. Like, even as somebody who used to be a competitive athlete, I loved the feeling of being able to compete and hit numbers and do those things. But, at 4 a.m. when I'm starting my first of 3 workouts for the day, and I'm like, what am I doing? And why am I doing this? And for my parents listening, there's no other love like the love for a child. Okay. But you're going to lie to me if you don't agree with me that, like, at no point when we signed up did we say, hey, for 38 days in a row, I want to be woken up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and 4 a.m. because this sounds fun. No, you end up like a sleep deprived zombie. But the result of raising a child and having, like, for me, my little 8.5-year-old best friend, and I was like, oh, this is a part of that process. And
Yeah.
I love that you said that. And just because I'm driving people nuts with the open loops, earlier I said 2 book recommendations. I'm glad I waited for the second one. The second one is Personality Isn't Permanent by Benjamin Hardy, which is a really, really good one,
I don't
which
think I've ever
speaks to
read that one. Yeah.
Oh, I think you would love it. Like the behavioral psychology stuff that's in you that, you call
Yeah.
performance, that's in there.
Yeah.
It's really, really good. Because you make so much sense about all of it. And even the snow analogy, I'm totally stealing that and giving you credit,
Do it.
because that is one of the best ways that I've ever envisioned neural pathways being rewritten, and getting grooved in and creating those grooves. And I also want to ask you a question, and I'm just going to phrase this out loud because it came to me when you were talking about that. I think something that I see often is when people go through these stages of, like, growth or habit change or performance, that they'll start this initial, like, rewrite this habit, and they'll walk through the snow, but then they get so comfortable walking through that same track of snow that they'll live there and they won't move into the next one. And it's like this thinking there's a finish line kind of thing. And, for somebody who has a background in psychology and performance psychology and sports and all of it, I think entrepreneurship is very closely related to professional sports. Like, the moment you think you've made it, you're about to lose, because there's always, like, this next level. And so how do you help people, or with clients or anybody listening, and even yourself included, when we think about your pursuits of, like, sports and extreme sports, fall in love with the process, but also staying committed to growth to where there's the right amount of pressure, so that the muscle's actually getting stronger and it doesn't just become this checklist
Yeah.
of, like, this another thing to do.
Yeah. There's this obviously
We
analogy.
speak in
Again, we're
analogies.
just
We're
speaking
good.
analogies. I am a huge, like, mountaineer, a huge summiter. I live and breathe in the mountains. Which is very funny because I grew up in Florida. I another tangent, but Mount Rainier, for those who don't know, is a volcano, a 14er, so 14,400 and something feet. I actually don't know the last two off the top of my head, but 14,400 something feet. And It's in Washington State, and you have to have like true preparation. It's not like, I always joke like Colorado 14ers aren't real because you can like drive to the top of some of them, and Colorado people like hate that I say that. And I'm like, okay, well, you can't get to the top of Rainier without like proper training or hiring a guide. Like, so tell me what's up. Anyway, so we attempted Mount Rainier last year, and I remember thinking in that moment, like, I used to think only Red Bull athletes would do these things. And here I am. At that time, I was 29 years old. And I was like, I am doing this, and I'm doing it with my friends. I didn't hire a guide. We quite literally have the knowledge and the capabilities to go do these things. That's insane. That's cool. So you can, like, this Flatlander from Florida is now summiting 14. Actually, I didn't summit because we had to turn, but that's a whole nother story. But I is attempting to summit these crazy, incredible mountains with crampons on her feet, roped up, glacier travel, like having to have the experience to be able to pull someone out if they fall into a crevasse, which is a giant hole in the snow in a glacier, for those who don't know. And you can do anything. Like, I truly believe that. But back to the analogy of like, how do you not get comfortable? Something that I've told my clients, and how I created the name of my program, which is the Summit Mentality Program. That's my 6-month coaching program that I work with my female founders. How I came up with the Summit Mentality. One, summit, it's the top, it's cool, that's awesome. Here's the thing about summits and the people who are like in this area. There's this like community called peak baggers. And so they're like, they are, what they do is they bag peaks, meaning they like check off the peaks that they are summiting, the mountain peaks that they are summiting. But how we came up with summit mentality is, the thing about summiting a mountain, you don't reach the top and are like, okay, I never have to do this again. Even the people who summit Everest, who I now have, one of my friends is the youngest female American to summit Everest. She summited at 18 years old. She isn't like, and now I'm done, and now I don't have to do anything ever again. No, she's like, she went and did Denali, which is in Alaska, and she actually thinks Denali was harder than Everest, which is insane to me. But she, like, that whole idea of how do you not get comfortable is, there's not a top that's actually a top. You reach the top of that goal, you reach the summit of that mountain, but look at all the other mountains that are around you that you can continue to grow. And some of them are going to be smaller. Denali is smaller than Everest, but this girl, her name's Lucy. She's incredible. She's awesome. The youngest female American to summit Everest. She went and did Denali after she did Everest. She didn't lead up to Everest with Denali. Denali's like 24,000 feet and 18,000, 24. I think 24. I might be making stuff up, but it's really freaking tall. And then she did Everest after that. So she did Denali after Everest. And so like the whole idea about how do you not get comfortable is, look at all the other accomplishments you could be going for. But if you stay on your mountain and you just stay on your peak, yeah, you have a great view. You have an amazing sunset, an amazing sunrise, and it's a vibe there. It's a good time. But you're never going to get to experience the other summits. You're never going to get to be uncomfortable in different ways and train your body in different ways, because some of them you need to rock climb for. Some of them you just need to walk up, like in Colorado. Some of them you just need to drive up in Colorado, right? You can go to Pikes Peak and literally take a train to the top without even stepping foot on a path, right? Or you can go and summit Rainier with glacier travel and hike up with a guide, right? So there's all these different summits that you can reach. And so I encourage everybody to acknowledge that just because you're at one summit doesn't make any of the other ones less enjoyable. And you need different skills to do it. And looking at what you can do because of what you did do will empower you to keep going. Because you don't reach the top and you're like, and now I know everything about business. It's now we have a different goal. Can we make 500,000, the same that we did last year, but work half the time. New goal, right? It's shorter. It's quite literally shorter than it's not a 14er, it's a 10,000 foot. We're still making 500,000, but can we do it more efficiently in half the amount of time? Let's find out.
I think it's so powerful because like you're like everybody's like mental CEO over here, right? And I think this perspective, because you made a point that's so valid, is like you get to the top of that peak and there's always going to be other peaks, but also there's mini peaks that lead up to that. And it's this pursuit. And like somebody who lives in Montana on purpose, because hiking is my thing, right? Like I've realized through the exorbitant amount of like hikes that I do here that half the time now I won't even make it to the top because I found what I was looking for halfway up. And then I was like, I'm good. This coming from the guy who used to be like, I gotta set the speed record. I gotta get to the top. I gotta, sweat harder. Boom. There's also to the point of surfing and to what true adventure means. And you can correct me if I'm misspeaking, but you've said this quite a few times of like, your business is the path to find your identity. But not only to find it, you find it by building it, and you build it by setting these micro goals and finding those results and working backwards. And then that's what really allows you to have this identity separate than the business itself, and not take it personally and not internalize it, but be able to, I think in this point, recover or adjust and recommit. And I want to ask you about this, and I don't swear anymore. And if I did, I would drop this like with a hard F on this one. But like, I love your tagline. Like, my relationship speed algorithms is your calm the fudge down.
Yeah.
And I joke with people. My friend Liz Benny says this all the time. She's like, you as a business owner, you're just emotionally constipated. We just need to give you an emotional enema. And I'm like such a big fan of the visual. But, can you explain, like why that matters? Like whether it's in the lens of surfing or entrepreneurship, like you've coached so many women, and I'm assuming men, because it's all applicable, on like why it matters that we all calm the heck down.
Yeah.
And be intentional and present in like the actions that we take, because it can affect our business very negatively if we don't.
Yeah. There was a study done of track runners, and they asked the runners to, I can't remember the meters, but like, let's say 100 meters. Actually, I do think it was 100 meters. It was a quick sprint, right? And they asked these runners to run at 80%. They were like fast, but like not your fastest. 80%. They had them run it. They timed it. And then they had them restart. And they're like, okay, now I want you to run at 110%. Give it everything you got and more. And what they found is 80%, they ran faster. And the reason that is because and this is the physiology behind it, meaning the physical body, the muscles, and this applies to the brain. We can see this research is the analogy, right? What is happening when you are at 110% is your bicep and your tricep are firing at the same time. But if they're firing at the same time, they're counteracting each other. Your quadricep, your thigh muscle, and your hamstring are the muscle behind your leg are firing at the same time. They're counteracting each other. Rather than if you only fire the quad, then you only fire the hamstring, they're working together, right? At 80%, the runner's muscles were working together. At 110%, their muscles were working against each other. So that analogy brought to life the everyone needs in business to calm the fuck down. That is my tagline. And I got it from one of my good friends who's a copywriter. Her name's Molly Nutt. She's incredible. She calls it classy cussing. And she's like, because everyone gets the visual. Because if I just say like calm down, one, we get, I don't know about you guys, but I get anxiety about calm down, of like, I need to calm down, versus calm the fuck down. Kind of like, I always get a giggle whenever I go to networking events and I do that. I get a giggle, and which is the purpose. It brings everybody down. It brings like physiology brings their nervous system to a more calm state, because they're like, oh, I that's funny, right? And so when it comes to, my brain just stopped working there. Working against each other. You need to get your brain to work for you rather than against you, right? And so calming down will allow you to be able to think more logically. It your nervous system, your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system is like a light switch. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. And again, if you're like psychology, words, I don't understand. Your fight or flight and rest and digest. If your fight or flight is activated, you cannot think logically. We are animals, like through and through. Yeah, we live in the 21st century and we have technology and we can Amazon something right to our front doorstep. But we are here to survive and to continue the human species. That is it. Our biology, it takes over. And our threat is no longer saber-toothed tigers. Instead, it's financial security and whether or not we, eat our Chipotle at the end of the day. But if you are in fight or flight, your logic brain quite literally cannot function. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'm stressed out, but like I can still work. You're right, you can still work, but you're not thinking logically. That's okay. We can figure it out. The only way to actually logically run a business is from rest and digest, from calm, from ease, from 5 deep breaths, because it is a light switch, not a lever. I think a lot of people think that like rest and digest and fight or flight is like a teeter totter. Is that what that's called? What is that
Yeah.
called?
Yeah.
Right.
You're right.
It's like a teeter totter where like, oh, I'm just like slightly more rest and digest, and my fight or flight's like not bad. It's just kind of that. No, it's a yes or no. It's a black and white. Like your nervous system is a black or white light switch, and that's it. So when you're in fight or flight, when you're stressed, when your cortisol levels are high, your adrenaline is going, you're like, how am I going to make rent? How am I going to put food on the table? How am I going to do all these things? And all those questions are going through your brain. You are in fight or flight. Your nervous system is working against logic. And so when it comes to my tagline and what I teach everybody is being able to pause, notice, and then a high performer doesn't perform in stress. They learn how to shift out faster. That's what makes them a high performer. And this goes for athletes, for soldiers, for leaders, for executives, for business owners. Name the field. A high performer cannot work under stress. They learn how to shift out of stress faster. That is what makes them a high performer, because you cannot perform at your highest when you're under that level of duress. There is certain levels of healthy stress, right? Some of us are like, oh, I work really well under pressure. That's because your brain is interpreting it as good. You're not under the same amount of stress of a saber-toothed tiger chasing you. You are under a amount of stress of like, I want to ask Lady Caveman out on a date, right? That's good stress, right? Of like, I want to get me some, right? Stress of like, yeah, that's exciting. That's good. That's the level of stress we can function with, right? So shifting out of that stressful situation, stressful mindset, stressful whatever you want to call it, is what's going to make you a high performer.
Mm-hmm. I gotta give. This actually came up at the event because we were teaching people the conscious and unconscious mind, and the analogy of it being a light switch versus a lever, I think it's important for everybody to understand too. We also live in one of the most stressful times of the world, being so falsely connected, right? Disconnection of the guise of connection, to where we forget too that our cortisol is not something we can control. It responds to the environment around us. There's a lot of things that are constantly, you'll get to rest and digest and something flicks it up. An email flicks it up. You saw somebody's social media and it flicks it up. You didn't have a launch go right, it flicks it up. And I feel like even when you said this, because you said this as you were talking, the simple power in just taking 5 deep breaths and hitting pause, but then noticing, is one of the easiest mechanisms to just bring that switch back down to where it is. It's tier awareness, right? It's any state change, whether that's like, I have clients, I'm like, go splash your face with cold water. They're like, what? I'm like, vagus nerve through the middle of your face, mammalian diving response. Like, it's just a like reset.
Disrupt. Yeah.
It's a disrupt, because to your point, and somebody who can speak as a Marine for 13 years, the reason they trained us the way that they trained us isn't so that we would be a victim of the stressful world. So no matter how loud or how stressful it got, we were able to shrink our world as small as possible to think clearly, because emotional based decisions get people killed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in entrepreneurship, emotional based decisions cost you revenue, cost you the business, cost you clients. And the default, what happens, and this is just my thing of what I see, when you get in that state of fight or flight and you react in that, it tends to bring more fight or flight.
Yeah.
It doesn't reset it. Like, it brings more of what you have. And so
Mm-hmm.
what are some of your like favorite ways to like state change, pause, notice? Because I know there's somebody listening to this right now, and you said this earlier, like, I can't make rent in a week. I need to spend every single minute I have right now ruminating down this toilet, when in actuality, that's not the path.
Yeah.
So I'd love your thoughts on that.
There is, I mean, there's so many things that you can do that literally hit the disrupt like idea. I saw something on Instagram that I was like, wow, I don't even know if this girl realizes that she's sharing a psychological like phenomenon, but whenever she has like a freak out, like a moment of like, something happen, the like moment where like you're running around your house and your like belt loop gets caught on the door knob and you're like, like, and you're like, why is this happening? She literally claps her hand and she goes, and scene, like as if she's ending like a like fake TV show or something. She's like, and scene. And what that does is like literally disrupt what's happening. It has her take a moment and pause and be like, no, I can take a moment here. I can pause. I can have a second. Another one, great, ice bath. Stick your face in cold water. Cold showers. If you don't have access to that, like cold shower or cold plunges, cold shower. That kind of idea. A big ol' scream. Honestly, big ol' scream. That one's so slept on. I scream in my car so much.
Yep. That's what my hikes are for.
Yeah, something that I do, and the research originally came from the world of anxiety. And I started doing a ton of research because actually one of my best friends was diagnosed with like just generalized anxiety disorder. And I was like trying to use, my degree and like help her out more than just like, she started taking Lexapro, which she nicknames her sexy Lexi, which I love so much. And it's really helped. So like, for those who are like, I don't want to get on medication, like talk to your doctor, do what you need to do. For her, it was super, super helpful. She lives in New York City. She has a lot of like sensory just all the time. Every time I visit her, I'm like, oh my God, there's no quiet. That's insane. So one thing that I taught her and was very, very hard for a New York Big Apple run 100 miles an hour type of girly is physically slowing down. And for those people that are like, I like to walk fast, that's great. You're activating your fight or flight when you're doing that. So like, just so you know, if you're making that choice, just know that you're making that choice. If you're like, I have anxiety and I'm like, slow down. And they're like, I don't like to. I'm like, you're choosing that. I'm letting you know, here's the strategy and you're choosing not to take it. And I do that with my clients. I tough love them all the time. I'm like, you're choosing this option right now. Do you actually want to choose that option? Do you actually want to stress yourself out? Because I wouldn't. One of the biggest things that I learned in my 20s was to slow down. And it goes from like when I'm running around, and obviously there are times where you're like, I have to get there because I'm presenting. Then like, please present on time, like be there on time. But after drive home, drive the speed limit. Don't pass the car in front of you. Like, see if you can walk. See if you can cook slowly. See if you can, for those people that are like really clumsy and like throw shit everywhere, move, like pick up your glass, slowly walk to your couch, sit down. Like you will literally activate your rest and digest and bring yourself down. That is one of the most life-changing things, and it seems so simple. And as far as like everyone that's on here, that I get this all the time. I think I self-impose this because I address this at the beginning. Psychology isn't rocket science. And I'm so glad that it's not, because it makes everything accessible. Because if it was rocket science, God, this world would be miserable. Everyone would be upset and stressed out and full of anxiety all the time and have no skills to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that I teach, every one of my clients is like, oh, that makes sense. They're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, that's not rocket science. I'm like, yeah. My favorite analogy of like, they're like, oh, but I want something that I've never heard of. Who gets to 2 p.m., has a headache, and someone's like, have you drank water today? And you're like, no. It's a basic necessity, and yet we forget to do it, right? That's what these skills are, is like, hey, here's your water. You need it. You are 70% water. You physically need to drink this. Iced coffee and another matcha latte isn't going to solve it. Actually, it's going to probably make it worse. Drink your freaking water. Skills aren't rocket science. They are, oh, yeah, I have to remember to do this every single day. Bring
Mm-hmm.
your water with you everywhere you go. Wow, how life changing that is. And it's so simple. So simple.
It is. It is. And the last one I'll say, because you and I both share this in common, is my number one. I even have a model for this. I think you've heard it, the SOS model.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, for everybody that doesn't have it, the reason we made this model is because in entrepreneurship, there's two games that are being played identically. There's the game of the playbook, which is what you're executing, but then there's the game of the player, which is who you are to execute it.
Mm-hmm.
And all too often, to Karina's point, we get stuck in this fight or flight, perform under stress, and then we wonder why we don't have the results we want. So if you want that, just DM me SOS. It's free. It's just a Google Doc that goes through this training. But in that, the first thing I have in there is self-treat. And I asked Karina what some of those were, right? Like nature. Like, by the way, I want everybody to set up your phone and comically record yourself moving like a sloth through one of your like daily activities. Like,
I
I
love
love
this.
the frame of like making it like fun, but like
Mm-hmm.
I want you to walk in slow motion. Like, even if you want to talk, like talk in slow motion. Like someone's like, can you go on 2x speed so it sounds normal? But I've never thought about that one
Mm-hmm.
ever. But my number one coping or reset is just outside in nature, like just barefoot in the grass or even just outside. And I'll find like when I don't do it with the intention of like, I'm going to walk 20,000 steps or I'm going to go run, I walk really, really slow and it's really presencing and it tends to slow me down. And it's really funny because I went from driving a sports car in California to I drive a Subaru Outback in Montana. And my 8-year-old's like, Dad, why are you only doing the speed limit? I'm like, I'm not in a rush
Where are
to
we
get
going?
anywhere.
Yeah.
And I even yesterday, like after the event, I was like, I had like 3 hours to kill before I picked my son up from school when I dropped my team off at the airport. And I called my partner. She's, what are you doing? I'm like, driving. She's like, where? I'm like, I don't know. She's like, okay. And I ended up driving to a lake. I drove to the beach and I got some bad business news when I was sitting at the lake, what would normally spiral me. And I was like, okay, well, it's already done. So
Mm-hmm.
how am I going to go about this? And I waited and I had clarity. And it's such a valid point of like slowing down. And, for all my Marines listening to this, like this was drilled in our head a million times: slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And I just
Mm-hmm.
love that, the way that you described that. Before I forget, just for everybody listening, I'm going to do this for Karina because I follow Karina on Instagram, but she also has an incredible podcast. And so will you like plug yourself before I move into like the end of the show? But like I want to hit it now because for everybody who doesn't get the metaphors, it all applies to business as well. But I think he'd behoove you to go check out her podcast and also check out her Instagram at minimum. But would you mind plugging yourself?
Yeah. I mean, everything's under the same name. So True Adventure Podcast, trueadventurecollective.com, True Adventure Co. on Instagram. But the podcast is really cool, specifically for entrepreneurs. I do personally only serve female founders. I have a contractor who works under me who works with my male clients, who actually worked with me. I met him when I was at the US Army, and he now works for the Air Force down in Florida. But he works with all of my male clients. So if you're a male client and you're like, this is cool, I still have someone who works with you. But the podcast is all about using performance psychology in the business world. And I use all of these mountain experiences. I use my failed summit of Rainier as an experience. I'm a huge rock climber, and learning that skill. I'm learning this really terrifying skill when I was in my 20s. Now I'm in my 30s. And like, this is something that, not for the faint of heart, but how do we get over this? How do we get over these quite literally life-threatening situations, and in business, seemingly life-threatening situations of dealing with financial concerns, or, leadership struggles and team development and team culture. And we use performance psychology to help better ourselves as business owners. And most of the episodes are like under 20 minutes for myself. And then I do my interview episodes as well for like the clients, or just people who I find really interesting that my clients would love to learn from as well. So it's really cool.
Yeah. So is it trueadventurecompany.com for the website?
Trueadventurecollective.com.
True Adventure Collective for the website. And for everybody on Instagram, I can't spell because I was a Marine. It's a bad belief, but I own it. It's True Adventure Co. But you can spell adventure. I'm not going to try to spell it out because the V messes me up every single time, but you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I want to ask you too, because you're an entrepreneur. I know you personally, and I love our conversations. And I love like when two people obsess about psychology can have a conversation. You're just more educated. So I take what you say as gospel. And I'm like, Karina said she has a degree, but I know I've been saying it, but now I have like doctor approved in some degree. Well, not master's approved.
Master's approved. Yeah. I can't go back for another 7 years. I don't need that. No, I don't want that. I can't do that.
I don't think anybody has time for that. And I feel like the lessons are learned in the application of it, not the studying of it. Right. And
true.
And I think the reason I want to ask this is like, you're an entrepreneur, like you coach people with this. And in 2025, like in the last week alone, I've probably talked to close to 100 entrepreneurs because 30 were at my event. I have clients, I have people on Instagram reaching out. And you said something very early on that really resonated with me. The difference between, for a lack of better term, low performance and high performance isn't that the situation is different. It's how we can pause and shift our perspective and respond to it faster than reacting to it. Right. And so I'm just curious from your view, like if you had to give everybody like a 2 to 5 minute TED talk on like how to navigate the uncertainty of the world right now, how to navigate the thralls of entrepreneurship, like what would your advice or like your TED talk be for everybody for them to take with them?
Oh my gosh, that's so hard.
You've been doing it the whole show.
I know. Honestly, I would say like one of the biggest things that I think is important is knowing who you are outside of business. By all means, your business is amazing and it's so cool that you do that. It's so great and you built it from the ground up, but it's not who you are. And we have to really, I think the people that are most successful are really not the people that bleed their business, but it's the people that we look up to are the people that are like, wow, they're, chilling on a beach, or they're hiking in the wilderness and their business is still going, right? Those are the people that we look up to. We don't look up to the people that are working 80-hour weeks. I don't know about you, but like, that's not why I'm built. I'm not on this planet to work 80-hour weeks. My partner right now is working like 70-hour weeks. And I'm like, are you okay? And he's like, no. And I'm like, we don't want that. Right. Like there's this, like famous entrepreneur quote that like, I quit a 40-hour a week job so I could work 24/7. And don't get me wrong, there are some times that like we love that we can work remote. We love that we can work on a beach. Like I bring my laptop in order to work in certain places because I'm like, this is cool that I get to do this. But I'm enjoying that aspect rather than I have to, right? I can put my laptop away. Are there some days that overtake that I'm like, oh, personal life does have to take the back seat because that is part of life. But your entire identity cannot be wrapped up in your business. And there's this really famous assessment. It's called the Ames Athlete Identity Measurement Scale. And I want you to just replace athlete with business owner, replace sport with business. When you read through it, there are 7 statements. And what these researchers found is, and this is like yes or no. Again, it's like a light switch, black or white. This is how you decide if you have a healthy business owner identity. Is and obviously this started in the athlete world. But some of the questions, like one that comes off the top of my head are you friends with people who are not business owners? One of the things that I struggled with at the beginning of business ownership was not having business owner friends and only having 9 to 5 friends. So they didn't understand what I was going through. And then now that I have a ton of business owner friends, I'm like, oh, I got to remember that like my 9 to 5 friends are just as valuable and just as helpful, because what my 9 to 5 friends teach me is you can close your laptop at 5 p.m. and not give up crap what's going on at work. They're like, nope, I'm checked out. I'm not answering that email. They're like, nope, I don't care what my boss says. I'm on PTO. And I'm like, I need to remember that. Even though I'm my own boss, I need to remember that I'm checked out. I'm on my own PTO of my own business. I'm not checking in. I need to be out. I need to be doing something else. So your entire identity cannot be wrapped up in your business. And a last little, like nugget. I got this from a business coach when I first started working on my business back in 2021. And she said that the coolest thing about you can't be your business. And I was like, I love it. And that goes for anything, like I make mountains my entire personality, to be completely honest. I rock climb and I ski mountaineer and I bag peaks and I do all of these things. But if one day I can't do them, am I okay? Am I going to be okay? And I think the highest performers are the people that are well rounded. And the highest performers, the thing is they may not be Roy, who just won the Masters, he's been 17 years. He's been going to the Masters for 17 years. And he just won for the first
ending
time.
like a 13 or 14-year drought from winning a major too.
Yeah, exactly. So like I think he is a really good example of well-rounded, where like you can be going for something your whole life. You can be achieving something your whole life, and there are other aspects of your life. And that doesn't mean that like you're always going to be second best. That doesn't mean that you're going to like always be in a drought. You can be a high performer and not be the Michael Phelps, the Lindsey Vonn, the Tom Brady, Simone Biles. Like you can be a high performer and still be an incredible business owner. You don't have to be Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or, Steve Jobs or any of those like crazy, crazy levels. You can be someone who closes their laptop at 5 p.m. and goes and hangs out with their friends and family and enjoys their time. And that is a more enjoyable life than anything I've seen Bill Gates do.
Mm-hmm.
That's just me.
I love that. What was the name of that assessment again?
Ames. So Athlete Identity Measurement Scale.
Oh, Ames. Okay, got it.
Yeah,
Got it. I
want
want to.
It's so good. I like copy and paste the statements, and then I just replace athlete or sport with business or business ownership. And I talk with my clients about that, of like, what is our, and feel free to use that, scale. Anyone and everyone, it's Googleable. And you may have to search through some research to find the statements. I should honestly make a freebie that's like, makes it easier for them to find, but you might have to sift through some of the research to find the actual statements themselves. But it's 7 statements that you agree or you disagree, of like, I have friends outside of business, yes or no. I talk about things that are not business related, yes or no. I can't remember the other handful, but like those, yeah, it's super, super helpful.
Yeah, I'm going to selfishly ask that, but I'd say yes, probably helpful. The business coach in me is like, yes, please, because especially since it can be given to entrepreneurs. But I love that. And I think for everybody listening too, I think this is an invitation. Like this whole episode has been about like bringing to your awareness on how you can perform your best to be a peak performer, right? Business is a professional sport. And I think quite frankly, it's harder than some of the sports that I played at the highest level, because it's about being a renaissance in every bucket. And I think go ahead.
I do have to say, I was a Division I athlete at an NCAA school, and I was competing with the best of the best, and business ownership is 10 million times harder than anything I did at that collegiate level. For sure.
And I think the other point that like I would really drive home for everybody listening is that your identity can't come from your business. You have to have your identity and apply it to your business to have any chance of being a peak performer and having success.
And that's the true adventure.
That is the true adventure, said from Karina's mouth, who also is qualified to teach you things. And I'm just a guy who lived them all and talks about them passionately. And Karina's been on calls with me where I like jump into psychology and I'm like, I'm either going to get checked by her when I'm done with this, or she's going to give me like a kudos.
No, you do great. You do great. Honestly, I love it. I love it because I like get coached by people, and the amount of a lot of my business coaches in the past like operate off of experience, and I'm like, did you know there's science behind what you just said to me? Like, yeah. And then I teach them the science, and they're like, oh, cool, and I'm like, yeah, use it. And I'm like, I love it. I think it's so cool, and the amount of things that, again, psychology is not rocket science. I just read a shit ton of studies and wrote it. God knows. So in order to get my master's degree, this is the last thing, and I think we can close. I'm so sorry. In order to get my master's degree, you had to do a comprehensive exam. You had 24 hours to answer 6 questions. And I wrote 54 pages in less than 24 hours of research-backed everything word vomit that I possibly could. And then you had to defend it in front of 3 of your professors. And it was the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever done in my life. Worst 24 hours ever.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So we gotta wrap. By the way, for everybody, I will put the assessments in the show notes because I found them as we were talking. I found the pub NCBI study, which is the original ones. And these are actually really, really good. I consider myself an entrepreneur. I have many goals related to sport. Most of my friends are entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is the most important part of my life. I spend more time thinking about entrepreneurship than anything else. I feel bad about myself and I do poorly in entrepreneurship. And I'll be very depressed if I was injured and could not be an entrepreneur. So for everybody listening, either pause that and go back because those are the statements. And I'll also include the link in the show notes so we have it. But I would invite everybody at minimum to take that assessment and run that through to give clarity to the results that you want and your sense of identity. And selfishly also, for anything that landed or anything that resonated, please make sure you shoot Karina a DM on Instagram. We talk on Instagram. She's there, but I know it probably mean the world to her to hear what landed, what resonated. And I'm sure if you had any questions. And so her Instagram is True Adventure Co. Like I said, you can spell adventure or Google it, but True Adventure Co. on Instagram, and then check out her podcast. And I'm sure you'll see her in the world, in my world more. Who knows? Maybe we'll do some Instagram lives. We'll bring her to the Alliance, whatever, but we'll
love that.
Yeah, so we got you. We got you. I could talk. We could have done like a 5-hour Joe Rogan style podcast.
Truly, every time I get on these, I'm like, I should stop. I'm like, I need to.
You were great. They listen to my voice enough that I'm like, no, fill it, girl. Like, give them yours. Like they hear George's voice enough. Oh, that was weird. I called myself in third person. They hear my voice enough. I can't do that.
I love it.
But for everybody listening, just a common reminder that don't allow this to be self-help. Like if something landed or resonated, go start walking that snow path with fun and develop some new neural pathways, but also give it the chance to work and give it the chance to succeed. And if I can support you in any way, or if Karina can support you in any way, you know how to get a hold of us. So remember, relationships will always beat algorithms. And it's almost like I've said 600 times now, the most important one being with yourself. So take it from the master's degree in performance psychology to put a stamp on that one. And you guys have a beautiful day. And we'll either see you in the next episode or you will hear me in your earballs. But either way, we're done.
Thank you.